From sneaking out of the hostel at night, helping satisfy each other's urges, to even using hard drugs to terminate pregnancies. You won't believe the crazy and fetish things that happen in these girls. Only boarding school in one small African town. This is why you must always check on your children regularly, especially those in boarding schools. Here's what happened in Royal Grace Academy. All the students looked up to Mercy. She was the perfect senior girl. Her uniform was always clean, her hair was always neat, and her smile was as bright as the morning sun. Teachers loved her, and students admired her. During the day, Mercy seemed like the kind of girl every parent would want their child to be, but when the night came, Mercy was a completely different person. She had a secret life that no one knew about. When the hostel lights went off and everyone else was deep in sleep, Mercy would quietly get up from her bed. She moved like a cat, careful not to make a sound. She reached under her mattress and pulled out a small bag. Inside were clothes very different from the school uniform, shiny, colorful clothes that sparkled like the stars. Mercy tiptoed to the back of the hostel, where the small fence stood like a silent guard. With one swift move, she climbed over the fence, her small bag slung over her shoulder. On the other side, she would change into her fancy clothes. The simple schoolgirl transformed into someone else entirely, looking like she belonged to the big city. Every night, she went to parties. There, the music was loud, and the lights danced in many colors. Mercy laughed, danced, and had the time of her life. By 500 a.m., just as the birds began to sing, she was back at the hostel. She climbed the fence again, changed back into her uniform, and slipped into bed before anyone woke up. To her classmates and teachers, Mercy was an angel. No one suspected that at night she lived a life full of secrets. If only they knew. Mercy whispered to herself one morning as she folded her shiny dress and hid it under her mattress. Her double life continued like a stream flowing quietly in the shadows. One night, Mercy was at a party that glittered like stars in the sky. The music boomed, and the air smelled of expensive drinks and perfumes. While dancing, she met a lady with sharp eyes and a sly smile. The woman leaned close and whispered, "You could make much more money, you know. Just bring a few more girls with you. Men will pay for them, and everyone goes home happy." Mercy's ears perked up like a cat hearing a mouse. The idea sounded sweet, like honey dripping from a comb. She thought about it, nodding slowly. Who should I start with? She wondered. Then it hit her. Lola was a quiet junior student with a sad look in her eyes. Her parents never visited her on visiting days, and they didn't send her money or foodstuff. She always ate the school's small portions, and sometimes she even went to bed hungry. Mercy knew Lola's struggle and decided to use it to her advantage. The next day, Mercy cornered Lola near the hostel. Her voice was as sweet as sugar. "Lola, I've noticed you've been managing," she began. "What if I told you there's a way to make money and live better?" Lola's eyes lit up, curious. "What do I have to do?" she asked softly. "Just follow me tonight," Mercy said. "I'll take care of everything. You'll make enough money to buy good food and anything else you need." Lola hesitated, her heart beating fast like a drum. But the thought of having money to eat better meals tempted her. Finally, she nodded. "I'll go," she said. That night, when everyone was asleep, Mercy woke Lola and handed her a small bag. They sneaked out just like Mercy always did and climbed the fence. Once outside, Mercy gave Lola a dress that shimmered like the morning dew. Lola looked at the dress, unsure, but Mercy urged her to wear it. When they arrived at the party, Lola's eyes widened. The room was alive with lights, music, and laughter. Everything felt strange and exciting. A man approached, smiling at Lola. Mercy whispered, "Go with him. You'll be fine." Lola, nervous but trusting Mercy, followed the man. Hours later, he returned her with some money in her hand. Mercy smiled as they headed back to the hostel, sneaking in just before dawn. The next morning, Lola was tired in class, her eyes heavy like stones, but her pocket was full. When Mercy shared the money with her, Lola felt a mix of happiness and guilt. It's not so bad, she thought. From that day, Lola became part of Mercy's secret world, and the game had only just begun. Lola couldn't stop smiling. The money she earned from sneaking out with Mercy felt like magic in her hands. She bought extra food, snacks, and even a few nice things for herself. It was like a new world had opened up, and soon her excitement became hard to hide. One day, while they sat behind the hostel, Lola whispered to Mimi, her classmate, about her newfound secret. "You can make a lot of money, Mimi," she said, her voice low but teasing. "You just need to come with me and Mercy." Word spread like wildfire. One by one, girls started approaching Mercy, asking if they could join her. Mercy smiled slightly, knowing her little group was growing. She picked only the prettiest and the most daring. By the end of the week, her crew had grown to 6 girls, each one eager to sneak out at night and return before dawn. With more girls, Mercy needed to keep things organized. "We can't get caught," she said, her voice firm as she addressed the group. "Everyone must follow my rules. If you mess up, we're all in trouble." The first rule was to smuggle phones into the hostel. The girls hid them in their lockers, under mattresses, and even inside their shoes. They used these phones to chat with the men they met at the parties and arrange their secret meetups. But soon, something unexpected happened. One of the girls, Fumi, missed her period. Her heart pounded with fear as she told Mercy, "I think I'm pregnant," she whispered, tears in her eyes. Mercy, calm as ever, shrugged. "Don't worry," she said. "I know a chemist who can fix it." That night, Mercy snuck out, not to a party, but to meet a chemist who was part of the scheme. He handed her a small packet of pills. "Tell her to rest for a few days," the man said, "and make sure no one finds out." Mercy returned and gave the pills to Fumi, who stayed in the hostel the next day, pretending to be sick. By the third day, Fumi was back on her feet, as if nothing had happened. This became their routine. Whenever a girl got pregnant, Mercy would visit the chemist, get the pills, and keep things quiet. The girls continued sneaking out, dancing the night away, and returning to the hostel with money in their pockets. Mercy controlled everything, like the captain of a secret ship sailing through dangerous waters. The girls trusted her completely, but little did they know that the path they were on was like a road paved with thorns, hidden under soft petals. For now, the secret group thrived, but trouble was waiting just around the corner. In the school was a beautiful, innocent girl named Ada. Ada was the kind of student everyone admired. She was brilliant, focused, and had earned a scholarship to Royal Grace Academy through her hard work. Her parents, who came from a humble background, had one piece of advice before she left for school: stay focused, avoid trouble, and make us proud. For a while, Ada did just that. She stayed away from drama and always sat in the front row during lessons. But everything changed when she met Mimi and Nene, some of Mercy's close friends and partners in crime. Mimi and Nen were the exact opposite of Ada. Their parents were wealthy, and they lived like queens in the hostel. They wore expensive clothes, bought snacks whenever they wanted, and carried the latest phones. Ada couldn't help but admire their lives, even though she knew their behavior wasn't the best. One afternoon, Mimi approached Ada with her usual confident smirk. "Ada, why do you always sit here with these boring girls? Come hang out with us," she said. At first, Ada hesitated. She had heard stories about Mimi and Nene, and her friends had warned her. But the way Mimi spoke, with her smooth words and charming smile, made Ada feel special. Before long, she started spending time with them. One evening, Mimi said, "We're sneaking out tonight. There's a party at this cool club, and you're coming with us." Ada's eyes widened. "No, I can't do that. What if we get caught?" Nene rolled her eyes. "Caught by who? Everyone does it, Ada. Don't be such a baby. Besides, don't you want to have some fun for once?" After a lot of pressure, Ada finally gave in. That night, when the hostel was quiet, she followed Mercy, Mimi, and Nene as they snuck out. The air outside was cool, with a faint smell of rain lingering from an earlier drizzle. They handed her a short, flashy dress and a phone. The dress shimmered under the dim light of the street lamp, its sequins catching the glow like tiny stars. Ada looked at it, unsure. "This is too much," she said. "It's too short." Mimi laughed, her voice echoing in the stillness. "Do you want to go looking like a grandma? Wear it or stay behind?" Reluctantly, Ada put on the dress, the fabric feeling strange and unfamiliar against her skin. They climbed the fence together, the rusted metal cold beneath her hands. The club was loud and packed with people, the air thick with the scent of sweat and cheap cologne. Ada felt out of place, but Mimi and Nen moved around like they owned the place, their laughter mingling with the music. While Ada sat nervously at the bar, a man approached her. He was tall, confident, and had a smooth voice that cut through the noise. "Hi, beautiful," he said. "What's your name?" Ada looked away shyly, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the bar counter. The man smiled, his teeth white against his dark skin. "I'm Jide, and I'd like to be your friend." Ada didn't know how to respond, so she stayed quiet. Before he left, Jide slipped her a piece of paper with his number. "Call me," he said with a wink, his cologne lingering in the air after he walked away. The next morning, back at the hostel, Mimi and Nene teased Ada about Jide. The sunlight streamed through the cracked windows, illuminating the messy room filled with clothes and textbooks. "Do you know who he is?" Mimi said, sitting cross-legged on her bed. "He's rich. He can buy you anything you want." Ada shook her head, her voice firm. "I don't need anything from him." But Mimi and Nene wouldn't stop. They painted pictures of luxury, of a life where Ada wouldn't have to struggle anymore. Slowly, their words began to sink in, like water wearing down a stone. One day, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Ada picked up her phone and dialed Jide's number. From that day, Ada started sneaking out regularly with Mimi and Nene. She met Jide often, and he showered her with compliments and gifts. A gold bracelet dangled from her wrist, a token from one of their meetings. But as her nights grew longer, her grades began to suffer. The once brilliant Ada now struggled to stay awake in class, her notebooks filled with half-finished notes and doodles. The ticking of the classroom clock seemed louder as her mind wandered. She didn't realize it, but she was walking down a dangerous path, one step at a time. One sunny afternoon, as Ada sat in the hostel trying to study, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jeed. "It's my birthday this weekend. I want you and your friends to come. I'll want you and your friends to come. I'll send a car to pick you up." Mimi squealed with excitement when Ada told her, her eyes lighting up like a child's at Christmas. "Do you know what that means? His house is probably a palace," she said, clapping her hands. Nain chimed in, twirling a strand of her braided hair. "We have to look our best. This is our chance to meet other rich men." Ada felt uneasy, but didn't want to disappoint her friends. That weekend, they sneaked out as usual. A sleek, shiny car was waiting for them outside the school fence. The driver, dressed in a crisp black suit, smiled and opened the door, and they were whisked away like princesses to Jide's house. When they arrived, Ada's jaw dropped. The mansion was massive, with sparkling lights that reflected off the polished marble floors, and music so loud it seemed to shake the earth. The party was in full swing, with people laughing, drinking, and dancing everywhere. Jid welcomed them with open arms, his eyes scanning Ada with a glint of admiration. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes fixed on her. She felt a strange flutter in her chest, but quickly pushed it away. As the party continued, Jeed pulled Ada aside and handed her a stunning gown. It glittered like 1,000 stars, the fabric soft and cool against her hands. "I bought this just for you," he said. Ada smiled shyly. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But then Jide's tone changed, his voice dropping to a low murmur. "You know I've been very kind to you, Ada," he said softly. "I think it's time you show me how much you appreciate me. Come with me to my room." Ada froze. Her mind raced, and her heart pounded like a drum. "I can't do that," she said, stepping back, her voice shaking. Jide frowned, his expression darkening. "Why not? Don't you love me? I've given you so much." Ada's voice trembled, her words stumbling out. "I made a promise. I won't give my body to any man until my wedding night." Jide's face darkened further, his eyes narrowing. "Promises don't mean anything here," he said, his tone icy. "You're mine tonight." Before Ada could react, Jeed grabbed her wrist, his grip firm and unyielding, and dragged her upstairs to his room. She begged and pleaded, her voice breaking like fragile glass. "Please don't do this," she cried. "My sister died trying to end a pregnancy. I can't go down that road." But Jeed didn't listen. He locked the door and forced himself on her. Ada's screams were drowned by the booming music outside. When it was over, she lay on the bed, broken and betrayed. Jeed left her there and went back to the party as if nothing had happened. Ada, trembling, put on the beautiful gown he had given her. It was the only thing she had to cover herself. When she came downstairs, Mimi noticed the gown immediately. "Wow, Ada, you look amazing," she said, not noticing the pain in Ada's eyes or the way her legs shook with every step. "Please take me back to the hostel," Ada whispered, tears streaming down her face. Mimi and Nenny finally agreed. They sneaked back into the hostel just before dawn. In the safety of her bed, Ada wept silently, her tears soaking her pillow. Her life had changed forever, and the betrayal she felt weighed on her heart like a stone. Weeks later, Ada began feeling sick. She woke up nauseous, weak and dizzy. One of her close friends noticed her symptoms and said quietly, "You should take a test." Her heart pounded as she borrowed a pregnancy test kit from a senior girl. The result was clear, and it felt like the ground had opened beneath her feet. She was pregnant. Ada sat on her bed, holding her head in her hands, her mind spinning like a whirlwind. The dim light in her small hostel room cast long shadows on the walls, making the space feel even more suffocating. She thought of her parents, the dreams they had for her, and her sister, who had died trying to end a pregnancy. The weight of her situation pressed on her chest like a heavy rock. Desperate, she confided in Mercy. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, her voice shaking. Mercy, calm and unfazed, shrugged. "It's no big deal," she said, pulling out the familiar packet of pills. "Take this and you'll be fine. Everyone does it." But Ada froze. Memories of her older sister flooded her mind, the sister who had tried to end a pregnancy and paid the ultimate price. Ada had watched her parents bury her sister, their tears falling like rain on dry soil. "I can't," Ada said firmly, her voice shaking. "I won't take it." Mercy's face hardened. "Suit yourself," she said coldly, "but don't expect me to help you when things get worse." Ada sat on her bed, tears streaming down her face. She was trapped, alone, and unsure of what to do. The weight of her decision pressed on her like a boulder, and she knew her life would never be the same. The small window above her bed let in a sliver of moonlight, which seemed to mock her with its cold, distant glow. Ada's decision not to take the abortion drug spread through the group like wildfire. The girls who once laughed and danced with her now whispered and sneered behind her back. Mimi rolled her eyes whenever she walked by. "So holy and yet so foolish," she muttered to Nain one evening. Mercy was harsher. "You think you're better than us," she said with a sneer. "Suit yourself, but don't come crying when you can't handle it." Ada felt their words cut into her like sharp blades. The nights in the hostel became colder and lonelier. The group, once her escape from the harsh realities of her life, had turned its back on her. Every glance from the other girls felt like a judgment, every whispered laugh like a dagger. The once lively hostel now felt like a prison, its walls closing in on her with every passing day. Desperate and scared, Ada decided to call Jeed. She sat on her bed, clutching the phone with trembling hands. "Maybe he'll help," she whispered to herself. Desperate for support, she tried to reach out to Jide. She called him, her hands trembling as she held the phone. "Hello, Jid," she said softly. "Who is this?" His voice came cold and distant. "It's me, Ada," she said. "I'm pregnant." There was silence on the other end. Then Jeed's voice cut through like a sharp blade. "That's not my problem. Go find the father of your child and leave me alone." Ada gasped. "Jeedy, you are the only one." But the call ended, and when she tried to call back, her number was blocked. The betrayal hit her harder than anything else. She sat on her bed, tears streaming down her face, but she wiped them away with trembling hands. The faint hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound in the room, a stark reminder of her solitude. I'll keep this baby, she thought. Even if it ruins my life, I won't make the same mistake my sister did. From that moment, Ada resolved to face the storm ahead. Her path would be hard, and she knew the shame would follow her like a shadow, but she refused to take the easy way out. She would carry her child no matter what. One afternoon, during a particularly hot lecture, Ada felt a wave of dizziness. Her vision blurred, and the room seemed to spin. The lecturer's voice became distant, like an echo from a faraway place. Before she could call for help, she collapsed onto her desk. The commotion in the class was immediate. Ada has fainted, someone shouted as the teacher rushed to her side. She was carried to the school clinic, where the nurse examined her. The antiseptic smell of the clinic and the harsh fluorescent lighting made her feel even weaker. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. The nurse looked at her sternly. "You're pregnant," she said bluntly. "How far along are you?" Ada burst into tears. The weight of her secret was too much to bear. The nurse, understanding the gravity of the situation, informed the principal. Soon, the news reached her parents. Immediately, the principal called an emergency meeting. "Ada, tell me how this happened," the principal said, her voice stern but full of concern. Ada, trembling and afraid, confessed everything. She told them about sneaking out, the parties, the secret group, and how Mercy controlled everything. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she spoke, but she didn't hold anything back. The principal's face darkened with anger. She summoned Mercy, Lola, and the other girls involved. The small office became a tense courtroom where the truths unraveled under the weight of Ada's courage to speak up. Even the walls seemed to echo the gravity of the situation. One by one, their stories unraveled. The truth hit the school like a thunderstorm. Phones were confiscated, and the chemist who had been supplying abortion drugs was exposed. Within days, the police arrested the chemist and Jide, the man who had ruined so many lives. Mercy, the once perfect senior girl, was expelled along with Lola and the others. Their parents were called, and the shame was unbearable. The ripple effects of their actions were felt in every corner of the school. Ada's parents arrived at the school the next day, their faces pale with worry and disappointment. Her mother's eyes filled with tears as she hugged Ada tightly. "Why didn't you tell us?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "We could have helped you." Ada sat quietly, her head bowed. She had made her choice to keep her child, but the road ahead was uncertain. The walls of her secret life had crumbled, leaving her exposed to the harsh reality of her decisions. The bustling school that once felt like a haven now seemed alien to her, with every glance reminding her of what she had lost. Months later, Ada gave birth to a baby girl. The child was beautiful, but Ada's life would never be the same. The scandal forced her to leave Royal Grace Academy. She couldn't finish her education, and the dreams she once had seemed far away. She stayed with her parents, raising her child and reflecting on the choices that had led her to this point. The whispers from neighbors and the looks of pity in people's eyes were like needles pricking her heart. But Ada held her head high, determined to give her child a better life. Mercy, once the star of the school, lost everything. Her reputation was destroyed and her future dimmed. No one looked up to her anymore. She lived in the shadows of her mistakes, a reminder that even the brightest stars can fall. The streets of the town seemed harsher now, and the burden of regret weighed heavily on her shoulders. The school became stricter. The hostel was monitored closely, and sneaking out became nearly impossible. Phones were banned completely, and students were given regular talks about the dangers of bad company. Ada's story became a lesson for generations of students. Her courage in keeping her baby and the pain she endured served as a powerful warning. It was a tale the teachers often retold during assemblies, a reminder that choices carry consequences. Ada's story delivers a profound lesson about resilience, responsibility, and the importance of staying true to one's principles, even in the face of overwhelming challenges. Her decision to keep her child, despite social pressure, betrayal, and isolation, reminds us of the courage it takes to make difficult choices and the strength needed to face the consequences with dignity. The story also highlights the importance of empathy and support in life. Instead of judging others, we should treat them with understanding and kindness, as even a small act of compassion can change someone's life. Finally, this story is a reminder that every action, no matter how small, has far-reaching consequences. Therefore, we should think carefully before making decisions, as they not only affect us, but also impact those around us. Thank you for watching my channel. Always stay strong, be kind, and make thoughtful choices. Once upon a time, in a distant village called Ela, there lived a kind-hearted man named Demi. Demi had two wives. His first wife was Lara, and the second wife was Bola. Lara was a very gentle and kind woman. She was loved by everyone. She had a beautiful daughter named Kemi. 8 years had passed since she had kids. Children were no longer coming, and she could no more have children, which saddened her deeply. Because of this, Dami's family made trouble with Laura, urging Dami to marry his second wife, which he bluntly refused. One day, Mama Dami came to visit them in their house in Aduwu town, where Dami and his wife lived. Lara was very happy to see her mother-in-law since she had not seen her for a while. She quickly offered her a seat and fetched some water, her warm smile reflecting genuine joy. "Ah, Mama, you're welcome. Oh, how was your trip?" she happily asked her as she tried to take her luggage. "I will be fine when you give my son children. I want grandchildren, not a grandchild. What if anything happens to her? I'll be left with none. Please, please don't ask me if I'm fine. You know I'm not fine, and I won't be until you give me more grandchildren." After dropping her mother-in-law's luggage, she went straight to her room and cried. All through her stay in the house, Mama refused to talk to Laura or eat anything she prepared. Dami's mother urged him to marry a second wife, hoping for more grandchildren. "Mama, I love my wife so much, and God has blessed us with a beautiful, intelligent, and hardworking daughter, and she's enough now." Enough? What is enough for where she's not enough? We want more grandchildren. We want a full house. We know she's everything you've mentioned, and we love her, but we want more to be on the safer side. When the pressure became too much, Laura pleaded with her husband to get a second wife. Dami refused, but when she kept begging, he had to listen to her. So Dami married Bola, who seemed nice at first, but soon showed her true colors. Bola was not kind like Lara. She had two daughters, Funmi and Said, and two sons, Tayo and Sei. For Dami, unlike Lara's child, Bola's children were not kind and often behaved badly, just like their mother, who always caused a lot of trouble in the house. Sometimes, Dami would travel with his lovely wife, Lara, to a neighboring town to have a quiet time with his wife, just so they could rest from Bola's troubles. One day, while returning from a friend's wedding in his hometown, their car was involved in a ghastly accident. Both Dami and Lara died. This saddened Kimi's heart as she was lonely and alone. Tears became unbearable. One day, while she was crying, Bola walked to her and said, "See, you better stand up from here and do something useful with your life." Kemi's tear-streaked face twisted in anguish, her hands trembling as she clutched her knees, trying to steady herself under Bola's cold gaze. "Do you think your tears will bring them back? You better go and wash the dishes and prepare food for me and my children to eat." With Laura and Dami gone, Bola became very cruel to Kemi. She made Kemi do all the house chores and would not let her rest. Oftentimes, she would not give her food until evening, so she continued to suffer in the hands of her stepmother. She became a maid in her own father's house. Each time Mama came visiting, she pretended as though she had been very nice to Kemi and never allowed her to visit Olamide, their grandmother. As Kemi grew up, many young men came to ask for her hand in marriage because she was not only beautiful but also had a good heart. But Bola chased them away, saying all manner of awful things about her to scare them away, always saying her daughters were better suited for marriage. One day, while Kemi went on an errand for her stepmother, she mistakenly kicked a stone and fell down. A poor-looking and handsome young man helped her up. His name was Della. Della was dressed in old clothes and looked very poor. They both exchanged pleasantries. He saw her off to where she was going, walked her to her house, and left. The streets were quiet, lined with small huts and flickering lanterns, casting long shadows that danced in the evening breeze. "I think I like her," he said to himself, smiling. "I will just make her my friend and watch her carefully. I'll make some findings to know who she really is." Dell was just a common bread seller who sold bread by the roadside. After making his findings, he concluded that he was going to marry her. Since her stepmother doesn't accept good-looking and wealthy men to marry her, then she will accept a poor bread seller like me. Perfect, he said. So he became her friend. Sometimes he would visit her and vice versa. Bola never complained about Dell because she felt he was the kind of person Kimi needed, a very poor man. So she was happy each time she saw the both of them together. One day, a man who had been talking to Kemi about marriage came to ask for her hand in marriage. She was happy. He was a good man, and she was going to accept his proposal. But when Bola realized that if she didn't do something, the marriage might work out, she came up with an evil plan with her children. Bola asked Kimi to prepare food for her in-laws. When the food was ready, Bola added a lot of salt and pepper to the food. When it was time to serve the food, Kemi served the food. Immediately, when the visitors had a taste of it, they screamed and asked who prepared the food. They all pointed at Kemi. They shouted at her, "Is this how you will kill our son? With your bad food?" And they left angrily. Kemi cried, "When will I ever get married? All my mates are getting married. Bola's 2 daughters are married to men who came for my hand in marriage. When will I ever be free from this bondage?" She kept lamenting and crying. When Dell heard about Kimmy's marriage rejection, he was heartbroken because he liked her and was waiting for the right time to ask for her hand in marriage. Well, I'm happy for her hand in marriage. Perhaps she was never mine. She's my friend anyway. I wish her a happy married life. So he continued his business, only for him to hear people whispering. When he got to the scene and asked what the matter was, he was surprised. He knew it was Boaz's handiwork. He quickly packed his bread and ran to Kami's house. She was crying profusely. "It's okay. Stop crying. I know it's not your fault. I've tasted your food, and I know you're a good cook. This is Bola's underhanded work, and I know it," he said. So he took her to his house, and she was there till evening. Then he walked her back home. When he returned to his house, he said to himself, "Perhaps she's the one. What better time to ask for her hand in marriage? If not now, but I wouldn't want to rush her with all this drama that has just happened. I will give her a little time, then pop the question." He was so excited, hoping she wouldn't turn him down. After a month, Dele asked Bola if he could marry Kemi. Bola laughed and thought to herself, why not this poor man can have her? It's no loss to me. In fact, this is the kind of person she should get married to. She accepted, knowing Dele was poor. Still, Kemi saw kindness in his eyes and agreed to marry him. "He's the only friend I have, and he's a very nice person. Though he might not have enough, we can work together and make this life a better and more conducive place for us and our children," she thought. So she agreed to marry him. As the wedding day approached, Bola and her daughters pretended to help but kept mocking and laughing at them because they could barely afford anything. They had just a few drinks and food, but they didn't mind. After the wedding, Del took Kemi to his home, which was far from the village. Kemi was surprised they didn't stop at a small hut, as she expected, but at a very big and beautiful house surrounded by gardens and fields, with lots of maids at her beck and call. Del then revealed he was not poor at all, but a very wealthy man who had disguised himself to find a true and loving wife. Kemi was amazed and happy, not because of the wealth, but because she found someone who truly loved and respected her. Meanwhile, Bola's sons were wayward, always bringing trouble to her. She married off Funmi and said to two of the rich men that once came to seek for their hands in marriage, but their bad characters were soon discovered. Kimi and Dele lived happily and always treated everyone with kindness, just as Kimi had done all her life, no matter how her stepmother had treated her. As time went by, Kimi and Dele were known not just for their wealth, but also for their generosity and kindness. They often helped the villagers with their problems and provided for those in need. Kimi never forgot how she was treated by her stepmother, so she made sure to treat everyone with respect and compassion. One day, a big festival was announced in the village. It was an annual festival that was held once every year. Del's family had been the host since the father passed away. Del had hosted for the past 3 years. The festival marked the time of the year when they gained freedom from a neighboring kingdom that had held them captive for ages, taking all their crops and leaving them with almost nothing to feed on. It was Del's great-great-grandfather who took his 7 sons and conquered the entire kingdom, bringing victory to the people. Since then, Del's family had been treated like royalty, highly esteemed. There was nothing that happened in the kingdom without the knowledge of the heads of Del's family. The ceremony was usually held in the village square. It lasted for 7 days in 3 different locations. Part of it was at the king's palace, part at Dale's house, and the larger part at the village square. It was a very colorful event where lots of gifts were given out.